Hello and welcome to Time to Talk. I'm joined here today by Natasha Farrant. She's an author of several children's books that have been nominated for a bunch of awards. She also goes into schools to give talks and run workshops on encouraging children to express themselves through creative writing. So Natasha, hello.
Hello, it's lovely to be here.
Thanks for joining us. One thing we're really concerned about is the mental health of young people. I noticed that some of the themes throughout your book sort of encourage children to empower themselves. You talk about standing up for what you believe in, knowing who you are and accepting yourself. Is this something you consciously try to incorporate into your writing? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
It's really interesting, the question of themes and what you consciously set out to write. I consciously set out to write stories that are entertaining and funny and moving and full of great characters, because that's what I'm interested in. My stories always begin with the characters rather than the plot. And so I wouldn't say I consciously set out to talk about certain themes, and I think we'll come around to talking about that later, because it's all about creative writing and creative expression. There are certain themes which, however unconsciously you do it, bubble up time and time again in everything that you write. So my first book for children was a World War II love story, and then there's the Bluebell Gadsby books, which are 4 books about this big, crazy, chaotic family living in West London. And my latest book was called Lydia, the Wild Girl of Pride and Prejudice, which is a sort of retake of Lydia's, the youngest Bennet sister from Pride and Prejudice. And yet, each and every time, yes, the characters are called upon to stand up for themselves, stand up for what they believe in, stand up for their friends, their family, and really, just be true to who they are. So I think it's something that's very important to me, and it's something I wanted to encourage young people to do. But I would say that actually probably a kiss of death for a book is to sort of set out to just, to set out with a message that you want people to take away with them. Absolutely. I mean, really, I'm just setting out to tell good, funny stories.
And it's really important, obviously, to send that message to young people as well.
But yes, and I'm proud that is the message I'm proud that that's the message that comes out. But I'm very much a firm believer in encouraging the joy of reading, and in reading for pleasure, and reading to expand your mind, but reading to be entertained, reading because you're lonely and a book is always a friend and a companion, reading there are so many different reasons we read, but I do think that it should be a joy. So that's what I set out to do. Excellent.
Now, one of your most recent books, Time for Jazz, which came out in August of last year, it's the last of the Bluebell Gadsby saga.
Yeah, I shed a bitter tear when I finished it. Well, not a bitter, but a sort of sad and nostalgic tear when I finished it.
As will a lot of young people, I imagine. Now, the Bluebell Gadsby saga follows the life of a 13-year-old girl who's grown up in a slightly chaotic family. Yeah. This storyline seems to have really resonated with a lot of young people. Why do you think that is?
It's this funny thing about writing where you don't really realise what you're doing until you've done it. It's based Bluebell, the narrator, is based very closely on my eldest daughter. What happens in the book is, the first book is called After Iris, and the action starts 3 years after Iris, the Iris of the title, has died. And she was Bluebell's twin sister. And I sort of realised after I'd written it that Bluebell's trying so hard, and the whole family are trying to move on, but it's written from her point of view. She's trying so hard to move on from this terrible event. And what she's got to do is she has this choice. She has to let go of Iris, who was part of her past and her childhood, and turn towards the future, which will be a future without Iris. And I had a daughter who, coming back to the mental health issue, I had a daughter who was anorexic at the age of 12. And I realised, in that sort of painful way you do when you're working through mental health issues, little by little, we sort of realised that actually part of that anorexia, part of letting go of the anorexia was letting go of a sort of childhood self and turning towards a sort of confident adult or young adult self. So I think the book came from somewhere that was very true. And I was also very conscious that at one point my kids would say anybody who came to the house whilst I was writing the series was like, be careful what you say because mum's going to put you in a book. So it was very much modelled on my kids and their friendships and their friends and the way they talked and the things they talked about. And so whilst I'm drawing very much from my experiences, the whole series was part of sort of very joyful growing up in our household. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, it felt very real. It felt very, very real. And funnily enough, I sort of, after I finished writing the next book, Lydia, I realised that the Gatsby series was about my kids and their friends and their lives. I was writing them, and in Lydia I was writing me. Lydia became this. It was extraordinary. It was this commission. This publisher, the publishers of Lydia said, hey, it would be fun. We think it'd be fun to tell the story of Lydia Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. We think we can make some money from it. Would you be interested in doing it? And I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. And I started writing it, and I have never felt such an affinity with a character as I did with a character who was created 200 years ago by Jane Austen. It was extraordinary. And so I just sort of found that through writing Lydia, through the tremendous, again, that word, fun, which is, I think, the buzzword that I wanted to keep coming back to, through the tremendous fun of writing Lydia and joy, I was reliving stuff about my adolescence, which I had buried very, very deep because, well, for reasons I don't want to go into, but quite painful things.
Yeah.
So it became sort of incredibly cathartic experience.
That must have been quite therapeutic for you as well, to go back and relive those experiences through a different character.
Yes, completely. Especially a character who for 200 years people have talked of as being silly and stupid and foolish and this disastrous character who nearly brought rack and ruin to her family. I didn't really like myself as a teenager, and I think for a long time, until I wrote this, I continued to not like myself as a teenager. And then I realised, you know what, Lydia was misunderstood for 200 years, and maybe I've been a bit harsh on myself as well. So it was good. And again, yes, part of that cathartic experience. So sort of coming back, as we will, because we'll get on to talking about the work I do with kids in school. It's coming back to that. It's just really about the sort of the emotion of writing, really.
I think that brings it. No, not at all. I think obviously that brings us quite nicely onto talking about the work you do with children in schools.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, inspiring young people to express themselves through creative writing is something you're quite passionate about. I mentioned earlier that you go into schools and you give talks and you run these workshops.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about what it is you actually do?
So it started, basically when you write books for kids, your publisher says to you, right, okay, we've got you to go and talk to this school, so off you go. And they give you minimal training and nothing to prepare you for the sheer terror of stepping into a theatre. It was the first talk I ever did. I stepped onto a stage, there were 200 kids, tiered seating, somebody shoved a microphone in my hand, which I'd never done before. And they say once you start talking, everything gets better.
Yeah.
It just got progressively worse and worse and worse. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. So that in itself was a growth experience. But so the whole aim of the exercise at first was to sell books. And then I sort of found that actually I don't like so much standing up and talking about my books, trying to sort of sell my work. But I do like the other thing they do is like, oh, can you do a workshop for us? I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's okay, fine. But I sort of found that I like the workshops, and I like getting kids to write, and I was good at it as well. I was talking to a writer last night who said, oh, I hate doing the workshops. And I said, no, I love it. There's something about sort of sitting down with just getting kids to express themselves, in their own words. So what I do, the way it works is, typically I'll go into a school, the most I've done is, there was 2 bunches of 50 kids back to back. So they're big, rowdy workshops. And I get them, what I do is I divide them into groups and I get them talking about their favourite books, and then I get them to, the workshops vary, but I get them to talk about their favourite characters, and then I get them to write a story based on one of their favourite characters. And the aim is to look at a book that they love and know very well already, but to look at it from a different point of view, so from the point of view of one of the secondary characters. And it's amazing what you get from. So some kids try to be funny, so they wrote a story from the point of view of Neville's toad in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's Neville who has a toad, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So they wrote it from the point of view of his toad, and they thought they were being funny and sort of a bit naughty. It was such a good story. It was such a good story.
It was actually quite an interesting perspective as well.
It was a really interesting perspective, and the interesting thing about that, actually, because there are different things come out, but the interesting thing about that was that they thought they were doing something silly and funny, and they ended up doing something that was just brilliant and clever and that made everybody laugh. And so they went from being like, yeah, I don't really want to do this, thinking, oh wow, we actually did something that was good, and so they were really pleased with themselves. So that was nice. But then you get other kids who will say, actually, I don't want to work in a group, I want to work on my own, and then they will choose characters with really sad things that happen to. So one example was they chose to write to Hazel's mother in The Fault in Our Stars. So if anybody who doesn't know The Fault in Our Stars, it's about two kids, well, a number of children who have different sorts of cancer, and Hazel is one of the main characters. And they chose to write a letter to Hazel's mother and to talk to her about what it must be like to have a child so very ill. And I don't pry, I don't probe, I don't say what's happened in your life to make you want to write this story. But I find that interesting, and so sometimes the stories they write are very, very sad, very moving, very mature.
Do you think creative writing is a tool that people can use to sort of express something that's going on inside?
Yeah, I do, definitely. And we're talking specifically about creative writing, not sort of diary writing, not a sort of just sort of pouring out of how you're feeling onto a page, but using stories to express how you're feeling. Stories are such a fundamental part of how human beings express their experience of living. I mean, we use stories in so many different ways. I mean, you look at politicians tell you stories all the time. People who are advertisers are using stories all the time, taking them into sort of more sort of into the realms of the more private world. You go to weddings, people will tell you, people will stand up after a meal, and when they come to the toasts, they'll tell you stories. Funerals, funerals are an incredibly powerful time for storytelling. And then the way parents relate to their children, sort of, be good or Father Christmas isn't going to come, or it tends to be always be good, and then this, that, and the other. So we use, I think unconsciously, we're using stories all the time to make sense of the world, to get what we want, to influence people, and to understand. And I think there's a lot to be said for just sort of for writing, for writing a diary and just sort of dumping your emotions onto a page. But I also think that sometimes maybe through telling stories, and this is what I want to explore, so this is where I'm coming, this is what I'm talking to a lot of people about, I'm talking to you about now, and talking to mental health experts and teachers and librarians and educators and other writers about, is how we use that process of storytelling with young people to make sense of their experience. I mean, I know that it works for me. I mean, even though I'm telling stories for fun and I'm telling stories as a writer, I'm telling stories for money. As I was saying about Lydia, I'm sort of, it helped me to make sense of things that happened to me as a teenager. But yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think what I want to do with creative writing is I want to help kids find their voice.
Yeah.
And we talk about finding your voice in writing, writing commercially, writing for publishing. every character needs a voice. Every book needs a voice that's convincing. But I think that question of finding a voice, just for yourself, not with a view to being published, not with a view even to writing a good story. And the whole point in this, and the whole point in all of these exercises that I do in schools, and more and more I'm doing, working with smaller and smaller groups, and eventually I'd like to work one-to-one in a sort of counselling capacity, is there's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong in telling these stories. And that's the difference between, I think, between school and between this, and it's sort of coming back to that idea of fun and playfulness and just sort of expressing yourself and using, yes, maybe not just saying this has happened to me, but putting it into a more, using a sort of more creative approach.
And also enjoying the process as well.
And enjoying the process, that's so important. And that's where I think our two roles sort of start to meet.
Yes.
You know, because I think we talk about about young people and mental health problems, and you and I both know, I mean, there is so much pressure put on kids nowadays, and so much academic pressure put on children in schools. And I've seen it in my family. I've seen about 2 daughters who are both very high achievers, and the amount of pressure they put on themselves. And so somewhere along the line we've lost the fun of learning, and somewhere along the line we've lost the idea that learning can be useful for learning's sake. You know, it's about results, and it's about university, and it's about jobs, and it's about all of that. And I think that maybe if you can just peel it back a bit and go back to enjoying the process, then we could be doing something really useful.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it is, as a writer, that's what I've come to understand, is that if you don't enjoy the process, there's no point doing it.
No. So as an author, obviously it requires a lot of discipline to get up and create new content every day. There's a book by Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art. Right. And in it he talks about this idea of resistance, how we sort of every day we have to go to battle with the internal forces that we have, such as procrastination and distraction, in order to produce our art.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you overcome resistance in your life?
I just add another enemy that we do battle against all the time, which is self-doubt, and that's as a daily enemy in the same way as procrastination and what was the other thing one you mentioned?
Distraction.
Procrastination and distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole conversation about the distractions and the sort of goods and evils of social media. I don't think we have time, but that's a big distraction. And procrastination, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
There's just no secret. There's no secret recipe. There's no magic formula. I once, years and years ago, before I started writing, I was telling a friend that, you know, I want to be a writer. I want to write books, and he just eventually just slapped his hand down on the table and said, "Natasha, a writer writes. You know, a writer doesn't sit around talking about things. A writer writes." So you just have to do it. It helps, I think, to have a routine. It helps to know when you work well, and to have a routine, and to have a goal every day. And you could, if you're obsessed with social media, you can just tell yourself, you know, I am giving myself 20 minutes, and then I'll check my Twitter feed, or half an hour, or whatever. Set yourself realistic goals. I think that's an important thing in life in general, whether you're studying or writing. Set yourself realistic goals, give yourself breaks, give yourself treats, go for walks if that's what works. There's more and more at the moment. There's people are talking more and more about the walk and talk thing, which actually is what the ancient Romans had a word for that.
Peripatetic?
No, it's not peripatetic. It's something about that. Or perambulatory. I don't know, but there was a word for it. Yes. So whatever works for you, but you do need to find that routine and find that discipline that's going to work for you.
Brilliant. And
for the self-doubt, you have just got to shut those voices up inside and just say, no, I can do it. And I think just learn to live with it.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining us, Natasha.
You're welcome. It's been so much fun.
I think that with obviously the increase in mental health problems in young people, I think the work you're doing is absolutely necessary.
I think it could become something very interesting and very useful, like I said.
Brilliant. And just finally, if people want to buy your books, where can they find them?
Oh, all the bookshops. I would urge you to buy from your independent bookshop if you can. You can, if they don't have them, they will happily order them for you. Otherwise, you can get them from Amazon, but I discourage that.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.